In 1999, there was an event that happened at Stallion 51 Aviation in Kissimmee, Florida, called the Gathering of Mustangs and Legends. It was an event that they had expected a few Mustangs to show up, and some of the legends, they were looking for guys like Bob Hoover and Chuck Yeager, of course, and Bud Anderson. You know, a lot of the early heroes that flew P-51 Mustangs. They were really a bunch of cool guys, and they invited me over to put cameras in some of the airplanes and get some shots. So that was my first opportunity to work with Chuck Yeager. Now, Chuck didn't actually own the airplane. It was owned by another guy out of North Carolina, but it was painted in Chuck's nose art and colors of his squadron, and had Glamorous Glennis on the nose, which was his wife. And it was a plane he was going to fly various times during formations. So I got approval to put a camera in his airplane. And while I was putting the camera in, and again, these are way before GoPros, it took about an hour to an hour and a half to put the whole camera system in, specifically a Mustang, and get it all wired, ready to go. And while I was doing that, Chuck was answering questions to the media right to the front of me, sitting at the corner of the wing. So he was maybe 8 feet from me, so I could hear pretty well what was going on. And Chuck Yeager had a reputation as being a cantankerous, sometimes grouchy old guy that just liked to fly airplanes. And he really didn't care for the media too much. And I listened to this firsthand, and I mean, one reporter came, asked him a question, he goes, "I already answered that from somebody else, get out of here, next person." And it went on like that. And this one guy comes up to him and he says, "Mr. Yeager," he says, "do you ever become like emotionally attached to the airplane?" And he looks at him and he said, "Son, these airplanes were designed to do one thing and one thing only, and that was kill people. And they did it very, very well." So about that time, I'm done with the camera installation. I got down off the airplane and I'm standing there, and I'm anxious to meet my hero, Chuck Yeager. I read both his books, and I've got the hardcover book with me. I'm hoping he'll autograph it. And he walks over to me, and I introduced myself, and I said, "I put cameras in your airplane, sir, if you want to check that out." And he looked at me and says, "I'll crawl up in there and have a look, and any of that crap is done wrong, I'm going to yank it out and throw it on the tarmac." That was my first introduction to Chuck Yeager. And I said, "No, sir, if you look at it, I'm sure you'll find it's done correctly." He got in the cockpit, I started the tape, and it was about an hour flight. He went out and did a formation flight with some of the other warbirds, some F-16s, F-15s, A-10s, and he was very animated in the cockpit. I wish I'd had audio, because when I say he's animated, he's flipping them off, and he's going like this, let's go faster, he's laughing. It was pretty cool. So I got an hour and 10 minutes of Chuck Yeager in the cockpit, which is just gold. And when he landed, after he got out of the aircraft, I got my book up, and I said, "Sir, would you autograph this?" And I was hoping he'd say, "Hey, good job, Mark, great with the camera work." He just opened it up and said, "Chuck Yeager," signed it, handed it back to me, and that was it. So again, he had a reputation for being really hard to get along with and not exactly media friendly. But my take on Chuck Yeager personally, and what I've known about him since then, he was an Army captain when he broke the speed of sound, and he was with Army Air Corps at the time, and that was his job. And the fame and fortune that came along with breaking the speed of sound, I don't think he really cared for it. I think sometimes he considered it to be a huge interruption, and it was just something he could care less if he'd have done it. And the fame that came with it bothered him. That's my personal take on Chuck. I may be wrong, but I've heard other people talk about him as he got later in life. He get harder and harder to deal with, but still a great American hero who broke the speed of sound. And he's in the right stuff. He's played, I forget the actor's name who plays him in the right stuff, but he actually has a cameo appearance in the bar there, Pancho Barnes' bar, the Happy Bottom Riding Club it was called. He has a cameo appearance and in the movie. But again, a great American hero, and it was a great experience for my early career as an aviation videographer at the Gathering of Mustangs and Legends. And I will say this one more point about that. I met a lady by the name of Ann Byers. Now, Annie was working for EAA at the time, and she was down there covering this event for EAA, a videographer. And she saw how I was doing camera mounts, and she was impressed with the way I did camera mounts, and she called up EAA and said, you got to hire this guy. That led to my working for many, many years at EAA as their onboard camera specialist. and again, I met so many people, and that's another story.